I live in New York City, and I was born right outside of New York City in a place called Passaic, New Jersey. My musical journey has been, it's kind of hard to contextualize, like even my own personal history, but I guess the abridged version is I come from a musical family. It's like I've got 4 generations, I think, of musicians, professional musicians. I essentially kind of resisted doing music as a kid, or really performance in general. I didn't really like it. I was afraid of it. I liked visual art a little bit more because I could be kind of, with myself. But eventually, I touched a guitar, and that was it. Going to music school and dropping out of 2, and then that was in Boston. I went to Berklee College of Music, dropped out after a semester, and then went to New England Conservatory, which is kind of like the more fancy school, and dropped out after 3 or 4 semesters. It's because I wasn't really quite finding what I was looking for. But I ended up moving back, and then eventually just setting up in New York City proper in Brooklyn, and that was about 12 or 13 years ago now. So since then I've been working in New York, or playing in New York. I don't know, there's kind of a difference in my mind between working and playing. I feel like most of the time I'm playing now rather than working. Eventually, after a lot of experience of playing and a lot of exposure and a lot of meeting new people, I was able to, for the most part, turn this into something that sustains me, Not so much financially, but spiritually, I think. Tonight, and I guess, at least for me, I have a sense of how I'm going to play and approach the instrument. I mean, I'm always trying to discover new things in my playing while I'm playing, or use the materials that that I have in order to actually develop and constantly kind of create or compose on the spot. I'm really trying to force myself to improvise and deal with the materials that I have. And then that's me playing solo, and then afterwards I'll be playing with this community orchestra, which will be, again, completely different. Really interesting because it's truly like a community improv orchestra where you have like very varying levels of players, and in a certain sense it's a real breath of fresh air from having this kind of professionalized class and these professional improv orchestras or jazz orchestras that I'm not necessarily used to but accustomed to. There's something about like community like that excites me, and there's something about the like having to deal with the varying levels that's extremely exciting. I think it forces me to find creative solutions to certain things that I'm very used to having it be that I'm very used to having be very easy when I'm working with more professional. It makes me think about music and recontextualize music in a lot of ways. So I mean, in a certain sense, it's like I'm learning a lot. And it also changes the way that I play and the way that I think and the way that I kind of approach, playing. It's really easy to be comfortable, I guess. Yeah. And it's nice to be put into a thing or into a position where I'm forced to really think about how to deal with certain materials and make music. And I like talking and discussing, about strategies and ways to make to make together. In a certain sense, I just feel like a bad teenager or something like that. Like I'm always trying to do the wrong thing. To an experience that makes me or the listener go, what the fuck was that? You know, what the fuck just happened? What am I doing? Like, I don't feel like I'm ever really redefining anything. I work within a certain construct. I do feel like my work is trying to, you know, push things in certain directions, but ultimately it's like we're always dealing with traditions and point, there's been so much development of, like, you know, double bass music, you know, in the last like 100 years of its history. I mean, it was essentially just kind of like this carpet behind the orchestra, this kind of seen but not heard instrument, which I think is actually a really interesting thing. I mean, because of its history as an instrument of accompaniment, there's actually all these really bizarre frequencies and these bizarre things that you can get out of the instrument that aren't necessarily easy to do on like an instrument that's kind of built better, like a cello or a violin. Because of its size and because of its range, it ends up having a lot of problems, and I think those problems actually afford the player to invent very creative solutions into dealing with those things. You know, the preparation comes from the performance. You know, it's really the idea of like practice and performance for me are like, there's no separation between them. So I mean, I've been practicing in front of people for the last, I don't know, 25 years. I've been practicing by myself, you know, for the last 25 years. There's not really a big difference aside from when I'm practicing by myself, I'm focusing on, you know, these kinds of really mundane materials, and when I'm practicing in front of people, it's like, how do I actually make sure that I'm not wasting these people's time? When I'm playing, I try to just kind of enter this space where I feel like I'm kind of entering you know, just kind of prepping myself for being present with the material and being present with the room. It's a very like quick process. And I take a breath and then I think, oh, okay, how am I going to start this? And then I second guess the idea, or maybe I start the idea. You know, I'm like, well, how do I do this? How do I start in a place that's going to be surprising for me? You know? That's the ideal, is that every single time that I'm doing this, I'm inventing something else. Or I'm using the materials to invent something else. I just, you know, I want to live in a world of constant variables and constant variation. You know, if I end up playing the same thing every night, it feels like shit. And that just defeats the purpose of me even doing it. Part of it is, again, just keeping myself happy, and the other part of it is actually keeping people around me happy. Not that there's any type of, no hierarchy there, really, I don't think, or I try not to think about it in that sense, like, you know, I'm more important or they're more important, it's just more, you know. But again, this is all really intuitive. I think it's hard to contextualize New York's music scene in a few words. Just because the rate of change is so fast, and the hyper-gentrification of the city has really changed the climate and the access to who's allowed to participate in art, which is, you know, probably the big problem of at least my generation and the generations afterwards. I mean, there still is this core of like older artists that are really making some very interesting stuff, and they have a core community, but I feel like the younger generations are lacking some very vital things because of essentially class warfare. So maybe class warfare would be the term. In the United States and even in Western Europe, I see this thing where people are like, I'm an artist, I'm not political, which is complete bullshit. Inspired by a lot of the people that I'm around, and a lot of the people that I talk to. I'm like fortunate enough to be around some really great people and musicians. Even, you know, the people that I meet on tour, you know, playing in the orchestra, it really was like inspiring to me. You know, again, like in you know, as I was talking about, like there's this new way that I have to think about things. Just try to be as open and open as possible to experiencing things. Well, I don't even try to even think about it in that context, right? And like I was raised pretty working class, and there's no, at least in the United States, there's no, you can't stop and think. You have to work. If I ever feel stuck, I just keep going, you know? I feel like if I'm looking for something specific, I'm going to be stuck if I'm always just open and just searching around me or being open. I don't feel stuck, ever. And I don't think it's even like a personal, I just feel like that's just a very like a very human experience. It's like you're always kind of marching, you know, forward, experiencing.